going to be discussing radio frequency, also known as radio waves, RF for short. If you ever hear me use that, it stands for radio frequency. Okay, so according to NASA, and radio frequencies represent a certain range of light within what scientists call the electromagnetic spectrum. So the electromagnetic spectrum is a term used by scientists to describe a range of all wavelengths of light that exist. The low end of this spectrum include radio waves, which our stereos use on a daily basis to give us our favorite tunes, and goes to the high end range, which includes gamma rays, which doctors use to see inside our bodies. These are dangerous, and that's why they do very quickly, just to see a little bit inside our bodies. So, I want to focus specifically on the radio frequency range within this electromagnetic spectrum. This is the frequencies that wireless technology run off of, which is known to be, and these, the wireless emissions of the radio frequency is known to be erratic and irregular, unpredictable and unstable. So, my proposition is that the chronic exposure to erratic emissions of radio frequency energy is detrimental to the health of living organisms. Did you get that? Chronic exposure to erratic emissions of radio frequency energy is detrimental to the health of living organisms. I'm going to be discussing how there are already legal claims within your cellular devices in regards to radio frequency energy, as well as safety precautions published by highly regarded universities. And we will also discuss how the RF exposure actually inhibits vital functions of living organisms, which include you, plants, animals, all living forms. So my first point, there are legal disclaimers and published safety precautions on cell phone usage. I'm going to use my cell phone. I have it on me always. It's a very handy device. I'm sure many of you also have iPhones. Now, I'm not sure where this is located in Android cell phones. You could do your own research. I have limited time here. But I will tell you where you can find a legal disclosure within your iPhone. So you're going to go to your settings. You go to General. You go to About. You scroll down to Legal. Within here, you will find its own very own category, RF exposure. So, the iPhone has been tested and meets applicable limits for radio frequency exposure. The specific absorption rate, SAR, refers to the rate at which body absorbs this radio frequency energy. The SAR limit is 1.6 watts per kilogram. That means how much it should be absorbed per weight. So, it says that the iPhone meets the limit of the 1.6, yet within this section it doesn't tell you what the limit of the phone, what level the phone emits at. It does have a link, and when we go there, it says based on the model, the different ones, and all of them stay under the 1.6 mark. I think my model is at the head, it emits a 1.08, and the body is a 1.14, so it's below that 1.6 mark, so it's safe, right? Yet, within this same section of the phone, it goes, to reduce exposure to RF energy, use hands-free option, like I'm doing right now, such as built-in speakerphone, the supplied headphones, or other similar accessories. Carry iPhone at least 5 millimeters away from your body to ensure exposure levels remain at or below the as-tested levels, which one of the tested levels was 5 millimeters away from the body because, none of us ever carry our phones in our pockets. And cases with metal parts may change the RF performance of this device, including the compliance with the RF exposure guidelines. So I'll let you guys look more into that because you should, because you all carry these cellular devices which has this legal claim in the phone. Not sure if you guys knew that. But as far as legally, they're covered. They've disclosed you. You didn't read the fine print, did you? So, Harvard's Campus Service of Environmental Health and Safety also published a report that discusses radio frequency exposure, whether it's detrimental or not. In the report, it's interesting that it concludes that there is no scientific evidence that proves that radio frequencies are harmful. Yet within the same report, at the end of the report, there are numerous tips to minimize exposure. Again, this includes not carrying the device directly on your body, using hands-free device, not having the antenna, which is located at the bottom, pointed away from you, if there is no harm, then why put a very elaborate list as to how to decrease your exposure to this radio frequency energy? So, down to number 2. Radio frequency, my second point is that radio frequency exposure inhibits vital functions of living organisms. Again, living organisms, that's you, it's animals, your babies, your moms, everyone. Okay, so according to, first I want to do another sort of definition just to give you a bit of context so you can understand my next point. According to brainfacts.org, the blood-brain barrier is a network of blood vessels that functions as a protective barrier around the brain. It keeps harmful substances such as toxins and bacteria from entering the brain. We all have this. It is nearly impermeable. And it's very important that it keeps our brain safe all the time. So when the blood-brain barrier breaks down, some substances that are normally kept out of the brain gain entry and cause problems for the brain. So the reason why I'm telling you this is that in the 1990s, a Swedish neuroscientist, Leif Salford, succeeds in opening the blood-brain barrier with radio frequency. And it did enhance the delivery of chemicals from the blood into the brain of persons with brain cancer. This is a scientist that was doing research to help brain cancer patients because when you give them the drugs, certain molecules in those drugs can't break that barrier. Yet with radio frequency, he was able to break that barrier, allowing those patients to receive these drugs. This led him to ask, according to Dr. Deborah Davis' book, Disconnect, which is an entire book focused on this subject, he says, if RF exposure causes the brain barrier to relax, how does cell phone exposure affect healthy, normal people around the world today who are regularly using their cell phones? I think this is a very important question to ask. So, another supporting part as to why RF exposure inhibits the functions of living organisms is a report released in 2009. That was quite a while ago. By the Public Library of Scientists, in which purified human sperm was exposed to radio frequency, electromagnetic energy, covering a range of specific range between 0.4 watts per kilogram and the 27.5 watts per kilogram. Again, the limit is 1.6 watts per kilogram, so they're working within that range that is known to be the limit. Okay, so the high quality sperm used in the study displayed a decline in both vitality and motility after exposure to radio frequency emissions in a dose-dependent manner. The control populations research group are the control group, meaning that they're not exposed to the radio frequency exposure. There's one with a variable with the exposure, one without. The group without had, after an incubation period, they were just chilling, right, while the other ones were being researched on. At the end, their sperm populations maintained motilities of an average of 86% over the incubation period. However, after exposure to the radio frequencies energies of one watt per kilogram, which is below that SAR limit, motility was observed to significantly decrease to 68%. That's nearly a 20 decrease in the vitality of these sperm, and the vitality decreased still further at higher SAR exposures. And again, if this blood-brain barrier is already damaged when I say it could allow things to enter from this radio frequency energy, which is in your pockets, gentlemen, all of these sperm are susceptible to it. So in conclusion, I'm really here just to educate you. There are obvious adverse effects to radio frequencies that operate at the frequency of wireless technologies. Yet, again, this is a passage from Dr. Dever's book, Disconnect. It's a really excellent book. I want to share a passage with you. I know, way over the limit, but you gotta know this. There is no denying that the majority of published studies on radio frequency radiation in the brain do not show impact. How is this possible? Alan H. Frey, which is a scientist who first demonstrated that radio frequency radiation relaxed the membrane surrounding the brain, explains, oh, by the way, I spoke about the testes because the blood-brain barrier exists in the brain, the eyes, the ovarian follicles, and the testicles. They all have those blood-brain barriers. Anyway, those who set up the studies, okay, wait, I need to go back because I counter. Okay, so Alan H. Frey, the scientist who first demonstrated that radio frequency radiation relaxed the membrane surrounding the brain, explains, Those who set up the studies are supposed to replicate the work on the blood-brain barrier. Yet they can make changes in the design that are small but crucial when you're doing science experiments. Everything has to be meticulous, down to the T. Basically, what is supposed to be an identical experiment with contrary results turns out to be no such thing. Instead, studies are done not to clarify the problem, but to confuse people. We've got quite a history of that in this field. This is on page 68, again, of Dr. Davis' book of Disconnect. So, the point of this presentation is to bring a level of awareness to the public. It's to empower the public, because you have the right to know what type of risks you have with the devices that you use every day. I use my phone every day. It's amazing. It's amazing. But once what is so is known and accepted, that's when we can evaluate facts, and that's when facts and ideas may then be evaluated so that we can strategically plan and execute a proper solution. So I'm going to be a cliche and end with an Albert Einstein quote. The world is not dangerous because of those who do harm, but because of those who look at it without doing anything.
All right, it takes you a while to kind of get to the proposition. There's a lot of background information. When you do get to the proposition, it's reasonably well labeled. It sounds like you're going to give us a preview, but it really is just the 2 points that are talking about defining what is going on here, and you kind of get into this whole discussion in that first section, not by making a claim, but by just presenting the information about the disclaimers. I think your inference is that the presence of the disclaimers shows that there is in fact a risk. That's the inference that you want us to draw from this, and so you need to make that as a declarative statement. I think the same thing is problematic on the second point where you say, so how does this work? That's an informative claim, that's an informative expression as opposed to a declarative statement that says RF exposure has a harmful impact on us. So you're kind of backing into making an argument by presenting a lot of information without getting to the point of the argument. It takes you a long time to get to that point. There's a lot of background information. I think you've got information here that suggests that there could be potential problems that we should be worried about. But like I said, it gets buried in a lot of other information that you're providing to give us a context, but it's so much background information that I don't think that the argument ends up being as clear as it should be. And it sounds like it's rushed at the end when you're trying to make the argument instead of that's the focus of the argument. Almost everything that you say that's making an inference is in the last third of your speech, which is all in overtime. So I think you need to do a lot of editing, and you need to kind of, as they say in the movies, cut to the chase. Let's get to the particulars here a little bit faster. There's some interesting information in the presentation, and I think you build a lot of credibility by demonstrating your use of the phone and showing us where that information is on the phone. I like the idea behind that. That 1.6 watts per kilogram it probably needs to be explained to most people. And later on, when you're talking about some of the studies, for instance, on the exposure, it sounded to me like it was 0.4 to 27.5 watts, and I'm going, well, that doesn't sound like that's the same range at all. You say it is the same range, so there's a disconnect between the two pieces of information that you have there, and I think that one of the problems here is that you've got the one piece of information so early in the speech and the other piece of information late in the speech that I don't think that people will always be able to see the connection between those things. When you talk about the sperm motility issues, that's all fine. There's some statistical information about that. I do need to know that there might be an effect. This is the demonstration that there is an effect is a little bit different from the demonstration that there might be an effect, and I think it would be maybe there's no evidence that indicates those particular things, which is why the doctor or the author that you're talking about is so concerned about these issues, because there's not enough information on these particular points. There is a little bit of that conspiracy kind of mentality that goes in at the end when you talk about how the research is designed to do a particular thing, and if it's not designed to do this way, then it gives us a disconnect on the information that's being presented. And I thought, well,
It's credited because he's a Swedish nurse.
yeah, no, I understand, but it's like I said, it's one of those things that often sounds conspiratorial when people are talking about that, and I don't think that adds to the credibility of the argument. I think there's an argument to be made there that says, just say straight out, the studies that have confirmed its safety or have failed to find a risk may not have been properly designed. There's your claim. Make that claim. That's the easier way to do it. All right, we've already spent 16 minutes on this, which is 10 minutes more than